Hey everyone, and welcome back. So in the last episode, we of course worked on the American waterfront area, and we built this amazing dark ride roller coaster to the area. And in the video, I also talked about maybe wanting to add like a little show and things like that. So I think it might be a good time to actually continue working on this area and keep expanding it until it is a completed new area. So let's jump right into it. Welcome to Magic Towers Resort. Alright, so before we jump into the theater, I think it might be a good idea to keep expanding this this backstage area here, because otherwise I would be closing it in, because I'm thinking of building it right to the side here. Now, an idea that I had for a show would be some kind of Cirque du Soleil type of show, and I thought well, my thinking was basically that something like a circus tent could work pretty well for that. But to just plop in a circus tent randomly into this area didn't feel quite right. So instead I decided to make an entire fair around it, which I think would fit kinda with the... well, maybe it's a bit not quite in the same era as the rest of the buildings in this area. But I think it gives a really nice feeling to the area and allows me to add some other rides as well. Because of course right now we only have the large dark ride that we the guests can enter and ride. But obviously we want some other rides as well. And this is just the perfect opportunity to add some more flat rides to the area as well. So you can see me pausing a fair bit there. That's because I'm looking for reference images. And I had some trouble getting to some proper reference images of some American fairs from ye olden days. But in the end, I found a few old pictures, and I also looked a lot at some recolorized pictures of Coney Island, which is of course a one of the first theme parks basically in New York, very popular. And very, very iconic because it has a very unique architectural style that they use throughout the whole thing, and it's a very classic vintage fair basically. Now, I believe Coney Island was also a boardwalk thing, but we're not going for a boardwalk here. Instead, I'm just opting to place it on the land. And now the interesting thing with the slide there is that I figured that I could kind of make it look as if it is a lighthouse, while also functioning as a ride for the fair at the same time, depending on what place you're looking from, basically. So I think that was a pretty smart little way of incorporating that slide into the area as a whole as well. Now this fairground will be a bit separated from the rest of the area, because you will have to deviate from the main path basically to get to it. But I think that's fair because there are only some smaller flat rides there, and of course the main show, which I'll try to draw as much attention to as possible, even though it will sit a bit further back into the area essentially. So here I'm just trying to come up with some names for the area, and I think I ended up naming this entire area, the entire American waterfront area, the Cod Harbor, basically. It's not a very creative name, but I think it's about the best that we got, and it fits with the entire theme that we're going for. So just a very simple, fun little name there. I think that would be the name for the area, so that's what I decided to go with. I haven't decided upon a name for the entertainment area yet. Still have to do that. Though there were a lot of really good suggestions for that one. So I'm sure we'll pick something out there. Maybe some kind of Spanish name. I think that would be cool and would feel kind of exotic as well. Which is always a good thing when you want people to be transported to a different world. Basically just escapism. Which is what theme parks are for a lot of people, I guess. Especially the larger theme parks are trying to achieve that. If you've never heard about escapism before, it's basically just giving people an escape from their everyday life. And that's what I think a lot of theme parks do really well these days. Especially with theme parks. So not per se amusement parks, but theme parks as a whole that take people to different countries, areas, different fantasies, that sort of stuff. I think theme parks do that really well and allows people to escape from their day-to-day life and kind of be in this fantasy world for a while without having to worry about any of the normal life. I think that's something pretty unique that people appear to be really needing these days. For some reason, I guess people did that back in the past as well, but I think it has gotten more popular because themed experience is a very rapidly growing thing that is appearing in a lot more things than just theme parks these days. Also with restaurants and shops as a whole, there's a lot going on in that area in terms of development. Now, for the main show, I did want to make sure that I had some good large paths that lead to the back of this area, where I will be placing the theater for this area. And also just making sure that the rides that are kind of in the way of the view for this theater are not really blocking the view, basically. So that people do know that there is actually something going on here, because that's the problem with placing something kind of in the back like we are right now. You run into the issue of people maybe not being able to find it or not being able to spot it and wanting to check it out. But I think by making sure that all the sight lines are still very much clear and open to the people when they get into the area, I think they'll know that something is going on here and may want to check it out. Now, of course, I wanted to go for like a circus type of show, but maybe a bit more epic. So I decided to call the show, and excuse me for my French, but it will be called Cirque Épique, which basically means epic circus. I ran that through Google Translate, I'm very proud. But of course, to fit with the theme, I wanted to have some kind of circus stand. And now circus stands are kind of hard to do in Rollercoaster Tycoon 2, because we don't have a lot of items for, well, kind of cloth, canvas type textures. So instead what I decided to do is actually place the circus ride on top of the building and kind of raise it off the ground again, just to make sure that you can see it from far away a bit better, but also to make it appear like this is, well, basically giving the visual clue that this is indeed a circus, but it's larger because it is actually part of this building. It also gave me something else that was really nice to work with, and that's the circus that's on top there is actually functional, and the guests are actually gonna ride that. So what that means is that people will actually be queuing for the show, basically, and every now and then you'll see a few I don't know how many peeps can actually ride that circus, but you'll see a ton of peeps streaming out every now and then when the show is done. So I think that gives a really nice and functional effect for this entire building as well. Because of course, this tent there at the top is not where the actual show takes place, it's just part of the architecture. But we will be getting into the theater interior in just a little bit. So I tried to make a nice little sign there for Cirque Épique, just to kind of make it interesting. I saw a lot of these sorts of signs on the Dirklink server. Dirklink has a Discord server for mostly NCSO, so no custom scenery like we're doing in this park. So there are always some cool ideas on there, and I think the sign contest that Dirklink did a little while ago is definitely some great inspiration that I may want to try and incorporate more into my park, because so far I don't think any of the signs are too impressive that are in the park right now or really grabbing people their attention. So that's something to think about perhaps in the future a bit more. So now it's time to get into the theater building. So I'm gonna make it a bit larger than the actual facade was in the beginning. Because that way we just have a little bit more space to work with. And in the typical theater fashion, we'll just be building a tribune that goes down towards the podium, on which the entire show will take place. Now, of course, a circus show may not sound very exciting, so I tried to come up with some simple ideas on how to make it more exciting and how to also just make it look inviting for guests to actually try it out. One of the ideas that I had was that perhaps during the show, maybe the back wall of the theater basically looks like a circus tent, and at some point in the show, the circus tent basically flies off and reveals the larger portion of the show, basically, with some elaborate decors and things like that. I think there could be a really cool basic idea, or at least a base idea for what this show could actually be. Now, apart from that, I don't really know what will be going on inside of this show. I'm by no means a show designer, if you will. So I'm just gonna try and decorate the theater building here. Of course, like with other things, I did look up some inspiration for theater buildings. I've personally not been in a whole lot of theater buildings yet, but I figured out, or at least I found out, that it is quite easy to find basically floor plans of theater buildings, which give you a very good idea of what kind of utilities these buildings actually have and need to house, and how they are kind of laid out. So that definitely gave some good inspiration to work from and to expand upon as well. So that's kind of cool. Now for the tribunes here, I'm using the River Rapids lift hill, basically. I think that's the most tribune-looking thing that we have in NCSO. I've seen Dirklink use it as stairs a lot, and we may have to do that in the future at some point as well if we find some good reason for it. I personally also think they look a lot like escalators, so that could also be something that they can be nice for to use, basically. So yeah, we'll have to see if we can incorporate that more in the future, because so far this is, I think, the first time that we're actually using the River Rapids escalator. Or at least the River Rapids lift hill, I mean. Of course, we've used the River Rapids before for some of the curved walls, because if you make a turn with the River Rapids, you can actually use that pretty well as a wall, just to give a bit more variety to round walls, essentially. So I'm placing some peeps there just to give some movement to the theater building. And here I'm just adding this track to represent some truss. Now truss is what we call the basically the steel that's hanging from the ceiling and is able to hold all the lights and sound equipment that you usually find in light and sound stages like this, basically. We call that truss. You can basically hang tons and tons of stuff from it, because it is very rigid, basically. It holds a lot. It's pretty impressive stuff, really. But so yeah, you see that a lot in those kind of buildings. So I figure we could kind of try to replicate that. And the Intamin track, of course, is perfect for it. So this is the inverted Intamin track with 4 beams instead of 3. You can find truss in 1, 2, 3 and 4 beams, just like with the Intamin track, really. It's basically the exact same as Intamin track, but then for hanging lights and sound equipment from. So now I'm kind of trying to decorate the area just a little bit more, and after that we're kind of done with the harbor fair that we have over here. Just adding a little roof there, just for the employees, maybe to go during their break. Maybe have a smoke break or something like that. I don't like it when people smoke, but you know, you gotta give your employees some time off every now and then as well, I suppose. It might be nice to kind of sit outside as well. And I was looking at some aerial pictures of theme parks, and a lot of theme parks do tend to have that in places where there are multiple employees working, basically, just to give them a place to get outside. So with that fair thing out of the way, I figure we could finish up a bit more on this side of the American waterfront area. And I wanted to do so by creating some kind of more industrial looking buildings, or at least basically buildings made out of brick, really. Just to kind of give the idea that this area of the American waterfront might be a bit more developed than the other side, where the buildings are still mostly made out of wood. And with that, we also kind of signify that this is a bit more industrially advanced already, this area here. Again, I looked a lot at pictures from Tokyo Disney Sea's American waterfront area. And here I'm trying to get some white bricks, and you can very easily achieve this effect by placing some bricks on one side of the tile, and then on the other you're placing a window. Because what windows really do is they just recolor whatever is behind them. So if you select a white window, everything behind that window will simply just be white. And just like that, you can get a lot more variety for the colors that you can use. So I've seen a lot of people use this to recolor some wall textures that may not otherwise not have any recolors. So I think that's actually a really cool trick that you can try to apply in your own parks as well. And I have used it already a few times in this park, I believe. But it's definitely cool to experiment with because you can get a lot of cool effects. Now the only thing to keep in mind though is that it does the windows do create some kind of trim around the outside basically, so you have to find a way to work with that. Either you like that trim and try to incorporate it into this design, or you try to hide it by making it the same color as the background, but it will still kind of show up. So that's something to play around with. Now, one thing that I quite liked on my reference images was the fish market, which seems to be a pretty iconic type of building for this area. It's basically a fairly low building, very open. You can walk into it from every single side, and inside of those buildings you basically find the different markets. And it would just offer some protection from the rain that's perhaps in the area, while the people are trying to trade their catch of the day, basically. So that's what I'm building right here. Just really trying to build from the reference images that I got, trying to replicate what I saw, and basically giving a RCT twist on it. Also made it a little bit smaller than the real life thing would be, of course, as a theme park. So we're not making everything full scale. That would just be too costly. And additionally, making buildings too large in theme parks may kind of overwhelm the guests, and also doesn't help with the walkability of the park. Of course, theme parks are really large, and when you have a guest walking through an area which is supposed to immerse you into an entire city, you don't want the guests to actually have to walk through an entire city. Because cities tend to be pretty large, and that would take a lot of your time to walk from one side to the other. So by making the buildings and things like that smaller, you just make the entire area and the entire park as a whole more approachable, basically. Because people will be able to get to things faster than they would in real life, and it just makes it a bit more inviting. Because you might have found that if you in real life you walk around a few blocks, you might find that you're spending actually quite a lot of time just walking to get somewhere. Of course, with theme parks, the buildings are smaller, so you don't have that issue just as much. Because you want to prevent people from feeling like they're just walking around all day. You want to give them the feeling like they're riding rides, not just walking around. Which for some theme parks works better than for others. I think one cool example, for instance, where you are walking a lot is Epcot in Walt Disney World in Florida. That park is pretty large, especially the World Showcase, which is wraps around an entire lake. It takes forever to walk around that. It's pretty large, but luckily they incorporate some boat transportation just to get from one side to the other if you want to, a bit faster than you would otherwise be able to. So here I'm placing a slightly more luxurious house, probably some kind of manor, but I just thought that it would be a nice little thing to place here, right in view of the guests. You should bring a bit more nature into the area as well, even though this is definitely some very maintained nature, basically. And behind that, I'm just placing a little fake facade here, or a fake roof, basically, that gives people the idea that there are buildings behind this block as well, even though it's just a roof placed on the same block, basically. Theme parks with higher budgets tend to do this a lot. One example, I think, is New Orleans Square in Disneyland Anaheim. Over there, they have basically this little city street that you can walk through, and when you look over the buildings, you'll see some sails in the distance. Well, Those sills are basically just right on the roof of those buildings, but they appear to be a bit farther away. Of course, we call that forced perspective, and you can find a lot of information about that and how to do it. But it's a very interesting topic that you probably already heard about. If you haven't, let me know, and I can maybe go into it a bit deeper in the future. So with that, we finished the American waterfront area, or at least that block of it, and we'll have to start thinking about what we're gonna do in the future to fill in that area a bit more, perhaps, but also what the next area is going to be, because we do have to start thinking about that, because the American waterfront area right now is really nearing completion. So if you have any ideas for the American waterfront area, please let me know in the comments, because then I can still try to incorporate them. And if you don't have any ideas for that, maybe start brainstorming for the next area, because right now I don't have any ideas for the next area yet. So let me know what you would really like to see, and maybe we can try to come up with some ideas together and incorporate that, maybe in the next episode already, and maybe in a future episode. So with that out of the way though, I wanted to finish up some of the backstage areas just a little bit more. So I'm building a little warehouse here in this fairly large area that we have left there. It wouldn't really make sense to just have that be empty. You want to use every available space you have as a theme park, because land is extremely expensive. And valuable, basically. It's probably one of the most valuable things that a theme park can have in most cases. But by placing a warehouse here, that probably has some really good functions. We can kind of make sure that this area is still functional and kind of filled in properly. So I'm giving it a little round roof. I thought that would kind of look nice. So I'm using the wooden roller coaster for that, because that's probably your best bet when you're trying to create a roof with a bit more interesting shapes than your usual roofs. And I would imagine this warehouse maybe to house some of the more seasonal theming. Maybe this could be used for some of the maintenance of ride vehicles, maybe parade cars, things like that. That will probably house very well inside of this building, because it's fairly large, and it is not part of any of the ride warehouses. So we basically have all the space to do with this building that we want. And trust me, theme parks always like to have some kind of storage. For some reason, it seems like theme parks don't really throw things away. They'll just keep a hold of them, of things, even broken stuff, just in case they might need it in the future. So when you're looking on Google Maps, you'll often spot some broken ride vehicles right behind the backstage areas. Probably because they might plan on using that in the future as some theming or something, or may want to fix it in the future. Who knows? But it seems like they really like to hang on to stuff. And I think this is also definitely visible from the way that theme parks might sometimes sell their ride vehicles. Sometimes you have theme parks that sell some old ride vehicles, and usually those ride vehicles haven't been in operation for years, so they've just been hanging on to them for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why that is. Maybe you have some ideas on that, but there you go. So with this warehouse out of the way, I wanted to make some more coverings around some of the other backstage areas, just to have a dry place to maybe store some items, or for guests to, the employees to have a break outside of the rain, in case it's raining, of course. So that's what we're gonna try to apply in more and more of these backstage areas, and I think we might have to start thinking about incorporating them when we are actually building these warehouses from the start, because it's a really small little detail that just adds a bit more life to the area. Now, of course, we need a lot of parking for the employees as well, so I'm kind of placing some parking lots where we have some dead space that we can't really use for anything else. So that way we can still use them efficiently, or at least the way cars can park there, and employees will be happy that they can park right next to the place that they have to work at. So here I'm placing another little roof covering for employees to have a break at. But I also want to try out some other things, like maybe some electrical utilities, and whatnot. I'm not entirely sure what kind of utilities you'd need, really. So I am just really referencing some aerial pictures from backstage areas from theme parks and trying to replicate kind of what I'm seeing, just to make it look realistic. So here I have a tank, for instance. I'm not sure what it would hold. It's the main street though. Maybe it holds beer. I don't know. Do we sell beer? I don't know. Do we sell any alcoholic stuff? I don't know. Yeah, just to give a bit more life. But I think little things like those really help to give more function to these backstage areas. It makes it look like they're actually being used. So here I'm placing some, I don't know, transformers? Is that what they are called? I don't know. Just some electrical equipment. Because I could imagine maybe the... of course, this roller coaster that's right next to it, it has a launch. And it is a magnetic launch. So they probably need some kind of power utilities to make that happen. So that's kind of what I was going for. Anyways, though, that's about it for this episode. Do let me know what you want to see in the next episode. And I thank you guys again so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like it. It really helps me out because it allows other people to discover these videos as well. And as long as we keep growing this channel, I will be able to continue. So once again, thank you so much for watching. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.